Hello, hello, 'tis I. All right, welcome back to Reading on YouTube with Miss Wood. What? So exciting! Yay! Okay, so we're gonna go back to chains. The other day we read chapters 34 and 35. In 34, there's this huge dinner party, and it's where they serve the turtle soup. What? Enter little tears. All right, so they serve this, grand, elaborate meal, and at the end of the chapter, we find out that Isabel is taking the food outside and hiding it. In chapter 35, we learn why she's hiding it. She's actually going to be taking that food to Curzon in prison. I thought it was really interesting when... Sorry, I'm distracted because I can totally see myself in my hair. My hair looks fun. I got a big bump. Anyway. All right. Guys, I miss y'all. I'm going a little crazy over here. Okay, back to what I was saying. What was I saying? Oh, yes, chapter 35. We're going to go on this adventure with her to the prison. Now, this is a really hard decision for her to make. She has a lot of inner struggle and a lot of inner turmoil because she's fully aware what's going to happen to her if she gets caught by Madam Lockton taking this food in. So she kind of goes back and forth, and she finally says, he is my only friend. He is literally the only person that has ever been there for me other than Ruth. And she says, I have to do this. I got out of the stockades because of him. I have to do what I can. So we're going to jump into chapter 36, which begins on, excuse me. Much better, I can see now. Which begins on page 224. Okay, you guys ready? So here we go. Chapter 36. Tuesday, December 3rd through Friday, December 13th, 1776. Our private soldiers in your hands are treated in a manner shocking to humanity. And that many of them must have perished through hunger. Had it not been for the charitable contributions of the inhabitants. Oh, I'm really struggling. I got a mouthful going on. Let me get it together. Okay. General George Washington complaining to British General William Howe. It's going to be a long 2 chapters, guys. Yay. All right, so what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to show you the pages here so that you can pause and mark up. And then pause and mark up. But I'm also going to do this at the end before turning the page. If you don't want to pause and mark up at this point, you want to read straight through, that's great. I've got the images online on the in a Word document. They're no longer being posted as individual pictures because I'm having to upload every single page. That takes a lot of time. So I'm just posting them all into a Word document so that they can be posted as one unit rather than individual pages. Because remember, I have 2 different books that I have to do. So you're talking about hours and hours and hours of work for me to do them individually. All right, so that's where you'll find them, in a Word document under the pages and the title of the book. All right, Lady Seymour was struck by a fever whilst visiting in Greenwich. She had to be carried to her chamber, her skin the color of an old beeswax candle. Dr. Dustage came to bleed her so that her bodily humors would go back into balance. Guys, they're literally taking blood out of her body. So they're literally taking the red blood cells that she needs to fight the white blood cells that are infected out of her body. So we don't do this anymore, thank goodness. We've learned a little bit about medicine. When the bleeding was over, Madame saw the doctor to the door. I was dusting the grandfather clock in the hall. Good sir, Madame said in a low voice, I believe our aunt would recover faster at our estate in Charleston. She could sit in the sun for hours and breathe the healthful air. Don't you agree? The doctor's bushy eyebrows flew up in alarm. South Carolina is hundreds of miles from here, over bad roads. Lady Seymour would be dead by Philadelphia. I wrote on the side, I think this is what she was hoping for. Which is likely Madame's intention, I thought. The doctor pulled on his gloves and picked up his bag. I doubt she'll be well enough to travel until spring, but I will call again tomorrow. He tipped his hat. Good day, Madame. Lady Seymour's bell rang upstairs as the door closed, and Madame squeezed her lips together so tight I thought she would bite them off. Go, she spat. Go see what she wants. By supper, it was decided that I would tend to Lady Seymour while she was bedridden. The master used his connections in the High British Command to secure extra firewood for the house, declaring that his aunt's bedchamber be kept as warm as the month of June. The heat of the room helped to bake out the fever in Lady Seymour's blood and to ease her cough. 'Twas warm enough that I could go in stocking feet, which was a comfort, for my shoes had taken to pinching my toes something wicked. As she recovered, the lady began reading all of the newspapers printed in the city. Whenever she dropped off to sleep, I would steal as many sentences as I could. I like that sentence a lot, but I hate that sentence a lot. I love the sentence because it just shows her perseverance and her desire to continue to gain knowledge. But I hate that sentence because of the word steal, that she feels that she is not worthy of having this on her own simply because she's a slave. So that word steal is a very powerful word. That's what we call diction. That's that word choice that the authors use in order to convey a subliminal message. So they're letting us know that she still is a slave. They're reminding us, or this author is reminding us, Isabel's a slave. She's stepping out of her place. Good for you, Isabel. I like it. Okay. Thusly, I followed the progress of the war, or what was left of it. The flames of independence were sputtering and expected to burn out any day. The rebels had run out of ammunition, soldiers, and money. Mayor Matthews, who had plotted to kill General Washington, escaped from rebel prison and returned to camp in New York, triumphant. The American Congress, frightened by the marching British, fled Philadelphia and ran to Baltimore. Newport, in my home state of Rhode Island, had fallen to the British too. So guys, I'm going to show you the pages again. So guys, we've got a lot going on here with setting. This is what's happening during the war, so obviously it's a setting. When I read that last bit of news, I was stunned. I had not spared a thought for Rhode Island for months. 'Twas several days before I could sneak up to the Bridewell, toting sausages, crust, and cheese rinds. The guard stole a few of the sausages and gave me only a few moments to conversate, but it mattered not. Curzon was not feeling up to much talk. I sat on the stone floor and checked the hole in his leg. It was hot, but free from yellow pus. Conditions in the prison had eased some. Folks in the town had donated enough blankets, and there was one to be shared between every 2 or 3 men. I wasn't expecting that. When I read that, I was like, what? What do you mean, shared? What? Huh? So guys, keep in mind, this is still pretty bad conditions. The British had promised that each prisoner would receive 2 pounds of pork and hardtack biscuit each week. They did not announce that the pork was often spoiled, nor that the men had to eat it raw, for there was no fire to cook it over. For my next visit, I saved my own helping of mince pie. I filled the bucket with potato scraps, mutton fat, and put the pie on top of it. The guard took the pie, just as I had hoped. I love me some good mince pie, he said as he unlocked the door to the prison, pie crumbs crumbling from his mouth. Frozen bodies were stacked in the hall, waiting to be buried in the pits. The clothes had been taken from the bodies to keep the living soldiers warmer. I kept my eye on the ground, out of modesty. Curzon was still not in the mood for conversating, not even a little bit. I thought he looked feverish, but when I went to feel his forehead, he pushed my hand away. The men snickered at that, and I took my empty bucket, and I left. Snow fell all that night. So guys, that's symbolic because it shows the cold and ice, but it's also symbolic because remember that we're marking water as symbols. So we definitely want to, and a reoccurring symbol, so we want to mark that as green as well. Okay, Lady Seymour prepared an errand list for me the next afternoon. She had spent the morning gazing into the fire and had not taken any food. I made bold and suggested that she eat a biscuit with honey for her own good. You need strength to get through the winter, I added. She set her pen down and she picked up her teacup, and she sipped the hot cinnamon water. I thought it pleased you when I left so much on my plate. Ma'am? The more I leave behind, the more there is for you to take to the prison. She studied me so close that I thought she could see my thoughts. That is where you've been taking the table scraps, isn't it? My head bobbed once, like a puppet's. And I am to assume that you know someone confined there? I found my voice. Yes, ma'am. She sipped again and looked at me over the rim of her teacup. It is honorable to help a friend in need. How did you know? I blurted out. She folded the sheet of paper on the table. These are the items that I would like for you to fetch for me. Purchase the inn and newspapers at Rivington, but not the books. Not the books because he overcharges. Go to that shop near the baker on Hanover Square. Elias says they have not closed. So guys, when I come back to these pages, I have a star that says remember this. And I want to come back to this point later on. So she's having her go to get books specifically from someone where they could be purchased all in one spot. Okay. And you know they don't need the money. If she's only going to save 10 cents, 15 cents a book, they have that money. So it's just, why is she making her go to a different place? That's what I was like, I wonder why. Okay, I bobbed once more and I took the paper. Please, ma'am, I tried again. How did you know? Her gaze returned to the logs in the hearth. Take care of how you go now, Isabel. Many people think it's fine and a Christian thing to do to help the prisoners, but I do not think my niece would be one of them. Yes, ma'am, I whispered. All right, I'm going to go ahead and show you the pages now because I'm at a stopping point. So if you want to pause, otherwise just look them up online. It started to snow while I was in Rivington's. The wind blew and the snow directly in my face as I crossed the square. I was grateful to step into the shelter of the stationer's store that was warm and dry inside and near peaceful, if such a word could be used to describe a shop. The jelly-bellied officer with thick spectacles was purchasing a tall stack of books from the man behind the counter. They were deep in their talk and appeared not to notice me. I took a slow turn around the shop, admiring the shelves, heavy with books and business forms and proclamations from Parliament and General Howe and slates and thick paper and quills and sealing wax. The books called to me. My fingers itched to touch them. It had been months since I had dug into the story of Robinson Crusoe. I glanced toward the counter. The men were arguing, friendly-like, but about some fellow named Hume. They both had their faces planted in some pamphlet. When I trod on a squeaky board, they did not even look up. I reached up to a bookshelf and I flipped my way through the books standing at attention. The titles were near as long as the books themselves. Treatise on the propagation of sheep, the manufacture of wool, the cultivation and manufacture of flax by John Wiley, or Cato Major, or his Discourse of Old Age with an explanatory notes by M.T. Cicero, or poems on various subjects, religious and morale, by Phyllis Wheatley, and my countless tracts containing sermons and advice. My fingers backed up. Mama had told me about Miss Wheatley. She was kidnapped in Africa, sold in Boston, and wrote fancy poetry that smart people liked. She had visited London and England. She had been an enslaved girl, but now was a free woman. All right, so how do you think Isabel feels when she actually is looking at this woman's words? And here she is a slave, and it's like, wow, oh my gosh, this girl got out. I mean, and she wrote a book, and here it is in front of me. This must have been one of those, these are moments that change people's lives, guys. So this is a big thing for her. I took the slim book off the shelf and I opened the cover. I had never read a poem. What if I lacked the skill? What if I were caught? Might as well throw myself in the river. Bang! Symbolic. Oh. I'm reading my note. She could have been killed for this, guys. So this word bang is actually symbolic, like it would be like the sounding of a gun. It's actually a door, but it definitely draws her back to her reality of that she should not be looking at books. Okay, so let's go back. Bang! The closing door startled me, so I near dropped the volume. I quickly set it back on the shelf and I approached the counter. How can I help you? Asked the young man who stood behind it. Yes, please, I handed him the list. From Lady Seymour. Oh, I hear she's been poorly, he said as he looked over the list. Yes, sir, but she's strong enough to sit by the fire now, and has a powerful urge to read. He nodded. She is a good customer, and I am glad she's on the mend. He quickly assembled everything on the list. The letters of Lady Mary, Woolton Montague, History of the Roman Republic, Volume 1, and the Expedition of Humphrey Clinker. and pulled out a large sheet of paper to wrap them in. As he worked the scissors, he paused. You knew that boy, didn't you? Pardon me? He continued cutting. Billingham's boy. Red hat, quick talker. He creased the paper with his fingers. He brought you here once, in May. Pointed to you out the window and convinced me to hand over 2 fresh-baked rolls. He told me that you were like to die from hunger if I didn't help. He smiled at the memory. I'm sorry, sir, I said. I didn't mean to take your food. He pulled off a length of twine. Oh, you didn't. It's one of the advantages of courting the baker's daughter. It's all the bread a man can eat. All right, so let me show you the pages. So guys, the fact that he smiles when he's thinking of the memory, this is telling us a lot about this young man without ever saying anything directly about him. This is all indirect characterization. He had not commented on my looking at the books. I feared he might try and trip me up and get me to say something that I ought not. But I saw no other choice but to be polite. I hope your lady's well, sir, I said. He concentrated on tying a bow. So do I. She's fled with her father to a village in Pennsylvania. It's called Hattsboro. They make hats there. Clever, don't you think? He tried to smile, but his eyes were downcast and melancholy. Perhaps 'tis safer there, I said. Aye, he said, finishing up tying the bow, with plenty of young men eager to protect her. But that's a tale for another day. He kept the package in his hands, lost in thought. Master Lockton will settle his aunt's account at the end of the week, I said. Oh, yes. He gave me the package and waited as I settled it in my basket. I tell you that you're one of them who feeds the lads in Bridewell. A sizzling log in the hearth suddenly popped, and I jumped. Not me, sir. Begging your pardon, but someone is mistaken. He crossed his arms over his chest, and he shook his head. That mark on your face makes you very hard to forget, lass. The heat from the hearth filled the room and made it hard to breathe. My eyes darted to the windows, and I fought the urge to run. It felt like all of New York was watching me. He leaned forward, he put his elbows on the counter, and he lowered his voice, even though we were the only 2 in the shop. You tell them boys in jail to hang on. There's plenty of us out here trying to help. Sir? He removed a slim volume from under the counter. This is for you. Do not let your mistress see it. I cannot read, sir, I lied. He snorted as he quickly wrapped the book. Of course you can't. He pushed the package to my side of the counter. All who love liberty should commit the words to heart. I can't take it, I started. I cannot pay. I only have a few left, and I should burn those, he said with a wave of his hand. You read it, you pass it on, and keep feeding the lads. I bobbed once, and I hid the parcel in my pocket under my apron. As soon as I could stand close enough to a fire, I would get rid of it. The last thing I needed was more trouble on the count of independence. Yes, sir, I said, hurrying for the door. Thank you, sir. He raised his fingers to his lips, and in a last warning, shh. That made me gasp. Guys, it made me remember Ruth. Remember how Ruth would say, shh, when she would get in trouble? So this guy's trying to prevent her from getting in trouble, and he uses that repetition of shh. Now, my note here, this is interesting. Remember that Lady Seymour told her specifically to go to that bookshop and get the books from that bookseller, even though she was in a different bookshop before to get the ink and the paper. So it makes me wonder if Lady Seymour was giving Isabel an ally, someone to help. I really think she was. I really think there's a lot more to Lady Seymour than we're knowing about. Okay, so let's move on to the next chapter. Chapter 27. Sorry, I have to count the Roman numerals in my head, so it takes me a second. All right, so, Miss Wood, you need your glasses. Okay, Saturday, December 14th through Monday, December 23rd, 1776. The distress of the prisoners cannot be communicated in words. 20 or 30 die every day, and they lie in heaps unburied. What numbers of my countrymen have died by cold and hungered and perished for want of the common necessities of life? I have seen it. This, sir, is the boasted British clemency. Letter written from New York describing the prisoners captured at Fort Washington. Guys, war is brutal, and this is really just showing that. Lady Seymour regained her strength by the day. I was no longer allowed to spend warm hours in her bedchambers. She took her breakfast and dinner alone, but joined the rest of the company for supper each night. Madame was saddened by her husband's aunt's return to health. The next week passed in a kitchen storm of flour and sugar, for Christmas was rapidly approaching. Madame's list of required delicacies was endless. Gingerbread, pies of brandied peaches, preserved cherries and mincemeat, macaroons, blancmange, Jordan almonds, sugar candy, and as many kinds of cakes as there were on fingers of both hands. I was the dog's body in charge. Wow, what a word. I was the dog's body in charge of keeping the oven stoked with wood and the ashes cleared out. Now, I did ashes with a little green question mark. Just wondering. Fetching forgotten ingredients from the market, beating eggs 10 at a time till my arms was near to fall off. 2 of the soldiers' wives got into a terrible squabble the day the woodpile froze. Hannah told Mary that it was her turn to fetch home the buckets from the tea water pump. And Mary said, no, 'twas Hannah's turn. And back and forth they went, the words getting hotter and their tempers growing shorter. I went yesterday, Mary said loudly as she was poured boiling water into a basin. You'd know that for a fact because you told me my nose was the color of a cherry when I came in. Hannah shook her head and scrubbed the floor. No, no, no. That was 2 days ago. Yesterday I slipped on ice and fell on my backside, near broke my tailbone, I did. I could barely come up the steps this morning. You're a lying codface, you are, Mary said. That reminds me of Peter Pan. They call each other codface. Hannah threw the brush into the bucket and the water splashed on the floor. Who you callin' a liar? Sarah, the boss lady, came through the door just as Mary rounded the table, her hands balled into fist. Sarah was getting close to her time and had a bit of a temper herself. She slammed the door so hard the whole house shook. Shut your gobs, she shouted. I'll report the pair of you to the colonel if you don't straighten up. There will be no more brawling or counterwalling in this kitchen. But, they both said. Sarah leveled such a glare at the pair that I thought their hair would catch fire. And suddenly I saw a way clear to my own purposes. Begging pardon, Sarah, ma'am, I said meekly. What do you want? Her eyes still on the other women. And then I've got 2 notes. This is a conflict between the 2 women. And then I've got this note here. So when you look at the note, it's upside down. Okay, let's try this one, guys. All right, the fight and Isabel's volunteering is just a setup for her to go see Curzon. Guys, remember that this is called an inciting incident in literature. Without that fight, she doesn't have an out to go see Curzon daily, and so we needed this fight to happen. We needed some way for her to be able to get to the prison. The only way for her to get to the prison is to go fetch water daily. So this fight has to occur. That's why this author put that fight in. So that's what we call an inciting incident. It incites the activities that will happen coming in the future. Okay. Next page. I can fetch the tea water, I volunteered. Mary shook her head back and forth. Oh, no, she won't. She'll tarry at the shops and then get out of her own chores. You make one of the men do it, I say. I am the first one to wake and build the fires, I explained. The shops are closed still at that time. I'll dash up to the pump and be back before the sun comes up. Sarah gave me a suspicious look. Why would you take on extra work, especially with it being so cold and dark in the morning? Oh, I was raised in the country, miss. Too much time inside makes me feel poorly. I like walking in the fresh air, even if it's cold. 'Twas mostly a lie, but the tea water pump was right close to the prison, and fetching the water would give me a chance to check on Curzon every day. Hannah picked up her scrub brush and knelt near the floor. I say let her go. Saves us the trouble of freezing our tails off. She dipped the brush into the bucket. Don't know what possessed me to follow my Jimmy to this god-forsaken colony. The next morning found me headed up the island long before the sun rose. When I knocked on the guardhouse door of the prison, it was opened by a soldier I had never seen before. A short man with black hair and sky blue eyes and a scowl. You can't come in, he said after I explained my errand. Regulations have changed. Tell her about the windows, called after another soldier, warming himself by the fire. The regulations permit civilians to deliver food and sundries. But not firewood, added the man at the hearth, yawning. But not firewood, said the first man. There will be regular patrols on the perimeter of the building to ensure that civilians do not tarry overlong in conversation with the prisoners. And we'll be checking the grub you give 'em, said his companion. Guards will inspect all civilian donations, the first man said formally. If you deliver contraband items, you yourself will be imprisoned. I shivered once. Are scones and jams contraband? Not yet. Back outside, I walked around the front of the building, trying to figure out where Curzon's cell lay. Some prisoners were already awake, their hands and arms wrapped in rags sticking through the bars of the windows. All right, so guys, what's happened is they're no longer allowing people to visit the prisoners. This is probably very twofold. The changes were made in part because they knew that secret goods were being exchanged back and forth. They also knew that there was a level of information that was being exchanged. So if someone's on the outside of a wall and you're speaking to someone on the inside of the wall, you don't know who else is in that room. So it's much harder for you to give secret information. So what they're trying to do, what the British Army is trying to do, is to keep these patriots isolated and to keep them from being able to receive contraband goods and information. So that kind of lets you know there. Okay, I'm gonna go, since I've paused, I'm gonna go ahead and show you the pages. What I just spoke about is my marginal note that's written here. And then we've got our second page over here. Okay, so let's keep going. Curzon's cell lay to the back of the building. I rounded the corner and I stopped. This is where this is a terrible part of the book. This is where the burial pits were dug. The pits were just a little smaller than the cells, and they were dug down to the height of a grown man. One of them had already been filled with bodies and covered again with dark mud. Two of them lay open, empty, sprinkled with snow like sugar on a cake. I did not know how many bodies would fit in each. So these are mass graves. I shivered again and I pulled my cloak tight and then turned my back to the graves and counted the windows, 2, 3, 4, until I came to the window that I hoped led to Curzon's cell. The eastern sky had brightened enough for me to see all around, but the inside of the prison was dark. So guys, the way that she moves is very symbolic. The way that she's like, okay, she sees these mass graves and she's like, and then she goes, counts the windows and keeps going. Guys, this is symbolic of what we do as humans. We have to keep moving, we have to keep persevering, we have to keep, saying, we're gonna get through this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna move on. And so the author's very good at showing the representation of symbolism in life and what's okay, that came out wrong, let me go backwards. The author is very good at showing how life really works. And she does this by the scenarios that she places Isabel and Curzon in. And this next situation really solidifies that. I stepped up to the building. The bottom of the window was just above the top of my head. I stood on tiptoe and I stretched my hands up to the bars. Hello? Curzon? Anyone? The nasty fellow who had tried to steal my bucket on the first visit, Dibdin, leaned his face against the bars. He had a blanket around his shoulders and Curzon's hat on his head. Won't let you in no more, huh? Any of y'all wondering what happened to Curzon? They changed the rules. Can you fetch my brother, please, sir? He's sleeping. I wanted to pull the bars apart, snatch that head from his head, and trash him with my fist in my shoes. But that was impossible. I forced honey into my voice in a humble tone. Then may I please speak to your sergeant? Remember the one who was super respectful? Sarge is dead. He turned his head and he spat. I'm in charge now. I'll take the victuals that you brought. That's the food. I started to reach in the bucket to hand the scones through the bar, but then I stopped. How do I know that my brother's not dead? Wake him, please. Dibdin opened his mouth, but then closed it without a word. His hunger was stronger than his temper, it seemed. He turned to someone in the cell. Go get that black boy over there. Guys, this right here, the way he's speaking, the way he commands, the way he barks orders, it lets me know that the Sarge really is dead. And this guy's now in charge. A moment later, Curzon appeared in the window. He was shaking so badly he could barely stand, his eyes half closed and teeth chattering. He had no blanket around him, and there were puke stains down the front of his shirt. His gold earring was missing, too. Curzon! Curzon! I hissed. What ails you? What can I do? He did not hear me, or he could not hear me. He was insensible of his own name or where he was. Guys, he is very, very, very close to death. Dibdin joined Curzon in the window. Terrible, ain't it? How fevers and smallpox run all over this place. There was a hollow laughter in the cell. Guys, they're taking his food. It's not that he has smallpox or fevers or any of that. They're taking his food, which is why he is not progressing and getting any better. Give him back his hat and a blanket. Is he getting his rations? He did not answer me. That was an answer in itself. The prison was not a place of hardship anymore. It was a hole of desperation. You bloody beast, I swore, how dare you let him starve? The words flew out of my mouth without pause. Who are you to reprimand me, girl? He snarled, putting his face up to the bars. His breath stank of rotting teeth and snot pulled at the edge of his nostrils. He is a slave. He will not be treated the same as a free man. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand, but you can remedy that with ease. All right, so I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to show you these pages so that you can mark up. I'm going to show you, make sure I get it the right way. I'm going to show you the marginal note. This is that cause and effect relationship of the Sarge dying. And then I'm going to go ahead and show you this page. We're about right here. So this is cultural setting here about the way that they can treat, or rather mistreat, a slave simply because they're a slave, because of the color of their skin. But Isabel, she just fights right back. She's like, I don't think so. So that eye of insolence on her face, the fact that she's willing to speak to this man like this, I'm like, yeah, you definitely are an insolent young lady, but I like it. I like it. It's well needed and very needed for Curzon at this point. I tried to keep my voice steady. How so? Curzon was seized by a fit of coughing so violent I feared his ribs would crack. He choked on the spittle and fought for breath, and then he finally relaxed back into a stupor, leaning against the window. Dibdin glanced back at the other men in the cell before continuing. Our Captain Morse is on parole, and he's lodged at the Golden Hill Tavern, we hear. Go there and tell him the men have fever and pox. Go there, one of our lads, Bridgebane, has a father in Pitaquetaway with money and influence. If the captain can get word to him, Bridgebane's father could arrange for a proper physician to attend to us here. Curzon coughed again and moaned. Sweat glistened on his forehead. And the doctor would see my brother, I said. Dibdin hesitated and then gave a nod. Aye. And he gets a blanket and food. Dibdin said something to the man I could not see, and a blanket appeared on Curzon's shoulders. Curzon clutched it around himself. And his hat! My voice was ice. Dibdin removed the hat and placed it on Curzon's head. Lay him down, on the rushes, he instructed, not the bare floor. Someone helped Curzon away from the window. I had no choice. I handed him the jam-covered burnt scones up to the window. Dibdin stuck the first one in his mouth and passed the others to the men who suddenly crowded around the window. If he dies, You will not see me again, I warned. Understood, he said. There's a mutual respect there, I feel. I found Captain Morse carrying out rubbish for the cavern keeper. He was well fed, carrying a brown coat trimmed with white that signified he was a prisoner of war. That would definitely be cultural setting. There was a big gap between his front teeth, but they looked clean enough. He joined me in the shadows of the alley and listened as I quickly explained my mission. I'll try to get word to Bridgebane's family tonight. It's against all laws of war to treat prisoners so badly. He paced angrily. How often can you stop here? Every morning. Well, good. You tell Dibdin I'll see what I can do to ease their suffering, but I fear it will not be enough. My brother is among the prisoners, I said, and he is ill. Can you? I can see to it that he is given his share of whatever Bridgebane provides. I surely will. Your brother was calm and brave during the final battle. He is a true soldier. The crow of the rooster interrupted him. The sun was fighting through the leaden clouds. Oh, okay, that's symbolism, guys. So at this moment where he's like, I will help, I will do this, then here comes the sun. So guys, that sun is symbolic for hope. So as things are really looking down, Curzon's on his deathbed, everything is in mayhem, here comes the sun. Da, 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 da. Okay, all right, sorry. So here's my page. And let's keep going. I picked up the buckets. I have to hurry. He nodded. Thank you for your help and my apologies, but I don't know your name. I am called Sal. Do you have a last name as well, Sal? I hesitated. According to Madam, my surname was Lockton, but it tasted foul in my mouth. So I shook my head. Mm-mm. He smiled. Well, just Sal then. Good day to you. Just Sal. So he nods because he knows good and well that she's not going to take that Lockton name. So he's like, okay. Lucky for me, the overcast morning caused the other servants to sleep past their normal time. By the time Hannah and Mary staggered it from the cellar, I had porridge bubbling and the tea steeping. I could not eat or drink a thing, for my belly was tied in fear. My thoughts chased around and round my brain pan. I could not visit the prison daily. I was sure to be caught and punished. But I had to visit the prison daily. Curzon's life depended on it. But if someone were to see me but if someone would see me and was sure to remember the mark on my face, word would get back to Madam, and she would tell Colonel Hawkins, and he would set someone to follow me, and Captain Morse would be flogged for passing on messages, and the prisoner in Curzon cells would all be hung and buried in the pit. When I thought of what they might do to me, I ran to the necessary and had me a good puking. Definitely man versus self going on. But the next day, I made my way up there again. She's a trooper. Food for the prisoner, water for the Locktons, and every once in a while a message to the gaping-toothed man in the brown coat at the Golden Hill Tavern. A few nights later, there was a terrible hullabaloo between Madam and the master. When he announced at supper that he was planning to travel on the next ship to London, he would carry messages to Parliament and conduct his own business and would likely return to New York by the summer. Madam was not pleased. First, she argued that he ought to not go, and then she argued, yes, that he should go and that he should take her with him. But when he refused, she threw a goblet in the fireplace and carried on so loudly that the master and Colonel Hawkins finally called for the carriage and left for a tavern. Madam doused herself with a good strong wine after that and went to bed. That night, the temperatures fell so far below freezing that the biggest of fire could not keep away my chill. I moved my pallet close to the hearth, and as I dared, and sat with all my clothes and cloak and blanket wrapped around me. 'Twas so cold I could not sleep. General Washington and his men were holed up at Morristown. Folks said they were in desperate need of stockings and food. I could scarcely credit how hungry men with frozen feet could win a war. They were fools to even try. I waited as the clock first chimed 11 times and then 12 and watched the firelight, trying hard not to ponder. When I got up to add more wood to the fire, my feet wandered themselves to the pantry. I like that. My hands pulled loose the board there. Under the board, there were some sheets of newsprint that I had saved, the lead piece from the statue of King George, my seeds, and the book given to me by the stationeer. So she's going to read this book, guys, which is going to plant seeds in her head, which is why she mentions the seeds. Pretty cool. I carried the book to my warm pallet and quietly untied the twine and removed the paper wrapping. I opened the cover. A fellow named Thomas Paine wrote the little book. He had called it Common Sense. We've talked about common sense. Mama always said that, I love this line so much, I underlined it in blue. Mama always said that common sense was so far from common. That's why it was so special when you found it. The first sentence in the book did not seem the first sentence in the book did not seem to contain any. Some writers have so confounded society with government as to leave little or no distinction between them, whereas they are not only different, but have different origins. Society is produced by our wants, and government by our wickedness. Guys, that's profound. You might want to unpack that and reread it a few times. I really feel that you can get this if you process each individual sentence. It took 4 readings to figure out the meaning. It took 4 readings for Isabel, guys. You can do this. Which I took to be, stop and pause. Really try to stop, like pause the video right here and see if you can figure out the meaning of this, what you feel, before we read the next part. All right, you're back. Okay. I took that to be that the life of folks is different than the world of what rules over them. Paine sure did dance a long time with the notion before he said it. Kind of like me. Okay. I closed the book and I longed for Robinson Crusoe, who was still stranded in the study where Colonel Hawkins was asleep. I dared not rescue him. I opened the book again and I attacked the next sentence. I love the word attacked there, guys. It reminds her of her sense of duty, her sense of obligation. She's attacking it. She's coming at it. She's going to go at this with all that she is. So let's show our page markups. We don't have a lot going on. I mean, we have a lot going on, but we don't have a lot marked. This one's pretty cool. Wow. Algonquin. Okay, so that gives us our 2 chapters for today. Go ahead and get those marked up. We're going to be moving next week. We're going to shift our reading days to Mondays and Wednesdays, and we'll have discussions on the chapters and our Zoom classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Love you. Peace out. Have a great day. Enjoy. Go bike riding. Get outside. Hopefully it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day today, so maybe I'll go for a walk later. We'll see. All right, I miss you. Enjoy. I love you guys. Bye.